everybody, this is Matthew Pickering. I'm just going to do a video of the AAT Mock Exam 1 for the Bookkeeping Transactions unit. Hopefully this will help students who are revising for this exam. I'll show you how I would approach each question. So on the right hand side we obviously have the exam paper, and on the left hand side I'll show any workings that I may have. Sometimes I won't have any workings and I just have to try and explain what I'm doing. So hopefully this is of use. So opening up with task 1, then we've got an invoice calculation. Worth noting that your answers to task part A will also be used in part B. So it's important obviously that we do our best not to make any errors in part A. So for part A then we have a customer order. So let's just make a note of the figures that are important. So we've got 120 units with a unit price of £3.60 each. And there is a trade discount of 7.5%. So I'm going to write that as a decimal on my spreadsheet. So that would be 0.075, which if we do 1 minus that, that will come in handy a little later in my workings. So the first part of the question then, the net amount before discount, we're going to do 120 multiplied by £3.60. So that's going to be £432. The next part of the task, net amount after discount. So we're going to use our 432, and we're going to, the way I would do it would be I would multiply by 0.025. All I'm basically doing, sorry, I'm multiplying by 0.925. All I'm basically doing is finding out what 92.5% of the figure is. That's a fast way of subtracting 7.5% basically. So I'm just cutting out the bit where I could work out the discount on its own. So that's £399.60. The VAT, we're going to assume, it doesn't say it anywhere differently, so we're going to assume that it is 20%. So the VAT is £79.92. And the total, therefore, let's go back to my workings. My total will be £399.60 plus my VAT, so that's 479.52. So that's part A completed. That would be worth 4 marks. So it would be safe to assume that's a mark per box. Part B, what will be the amounts entered in the sales day book when the invoice in part A has been prepared? So the total is going to be my total from the figures above for 479.52, VAT 79.92, and the net amount. The only thing you can do wrong is use the wrong net amount. So remember, we're going to subtract the discount, and that's what's going to go into my day book. So worth 3 marks. Now, the beauty of that is that if you get the first part wrong, part B is really easy and a really easy 3 marks for you to pick up. Moving on to the next part of the task. Now, historically, I've had a few students query this sort of task. I think there's a lot of students that overthink it a little bit. So just before I get into actually answering it, just so that you're clear, when you get this, if we have the little black triangles on the left and right of the column, then that's really useful because you can click them and make the figures go green. That will come in handy, especially in the second exam that you take where we're doing bank reconciliations. So let's have a look at this task then. A cheque for £1,567 has been received from JABC Limited, which they incorrectly state is in full settlement of the account at 28th February. The customer's account in the sales ledger is shown below, and then the task asks us to show which 3 transactions are still outstanding by clicking on the relevant transactions below. So I can completely understand why students get a little bit flummoxed by this, because it feels like it's really complicated. But there are a couple of things that you can do to make your life as easy as possible. So the first thing I'm going to do on my working sheet, now you can do this in the exam, obviously you won't have access to a spreadsheet, but you obviously will have the you'll have some scrap paper where you can do the same thing. So let's just make a note of those numbers. I'm not going to worry about the payment for now, so I'm just going to leave that as is. So all I'm doing is I'm just splitting into my 2 columns the figures from the account. I'm not really interested in what those transactions actually relate to. So the first thing to look for before we can do anything else is, are there any payments on the credit side which we know relate to transactions that are already in the account. So what I mean by that is, if we look on the 4th of February, there's a bank entry for 869. So do we know what that 869 relates to? So just looking at it at first glance, I can see that bank entry on the 4th of February, if we think about this logically, that isn't going to be a payment in advance of something. That must be paying off stuff that's already happened. And as we look at that T account, we can see that the £869 bank entry plus the £480 credit note, that comes up to £1,349, which, lo and behold, just happens to be the opening balance. So what I'm basically saying is that those three transactions, they all balance each other out. So I don't have to worry about those moving forwards. The next transactions on there, they are admittedly a little bit more complicated. So on my working sheet, what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to be a little bit lazy, and I'm going to delete the transactions which I've already accounted for, because I don't have to worry about those. So now I've just got 4 entries on the debit side and 2 entries on the credit side. So if I do, if I add up my columns, 5289, 142, and I find out the difference between the two of them, I have a balance of 5147 on my T account. And if I was to go through the full process of doing a balance carried down, that is what I would find. I would find that the balance carried down was 5147. We've then been told that there is a check of 1567 which has been received. So they've paid off 1,567, which means they haven't paid £3,580. So you've really got 2 ways of approaching this task. Okay, you can either figure out what their payment has paid off. So they've paid off 1567. Are there any blatant transactions in there which add up to the 1567? And if they do, then the 3 that are remaining are the ones that haven't been paid. Or do you just try and figure out which 3 transactions add up to 3,580? I would say it's 6 and 2 threes. There's no real obvious tactic with this, and it just depends how your brain works on this sort of task. My thinking would be, personally, if the outstanding balance is 3,580, well, they obviously then they haven't paid off the 3,420 transaction. That has to be included. That hasn't been paid. And so then, if I say, let's make a note of that 3,420 and find out what the difference between the two is. So we're looking now for £160. So I can see that the 3,420, add £270, which is the invoice to 1223. That comes up to 3,690, and I have a credit note of 110, which if I subtract that, that will come back down to £3,580. So those are the 3 transactions which were not paid off when they sent their payments. So that is, let's just check that. So 3,420 is invoice 1281. £270 is invoice 1223, and the £110 credit note 96. If you want to, at the end of this task, you could work out what the balance on the other 3 transactions was. So if we do 1,208, let's just make a note of it. So 1208 plus 391 minus 32. So if we add those up, that comes in at 1567, which is the payment that was sent. So I'm happy that that's worth 3 marks. And yeah, we're good to go. If we want to just to visualize it a little bit better, what we're basically saying is that 1567 has paid off the 1,208 transaction, £391 transaction, and the £32 credit note. The 3 that are not green on the right hand side of my screen, those transactions are the ones that have not been paid. They've not been cleared. Make that a little bit bigger. So worth 3 marks, that one. I would suggest it's a little bit more time consuming than a 3 mark question. There we go. And of course it's worth 3 marks. It means that um, without being sort of melodramatic about it, if you really are struggling on it and you do it, you're getting exactly tasks like that in the real thing. Just tick 3 random transactions. You never know, you might fluke some marks on that one, but you know, I don't think it's beyond any student to get that one, get full marks on that. So moving on to the final part of the task worth 2 marks. So let's just scroll down. So we've got a clean sheet on our working sheet. A quotation to supply goods for £3,550. Let's just make a note of these numbers as we go. So 3,550 plus VAT. I don't need to make a note of that. Has been sent to JABC Limited, offering a prompt payment discount of 2% for payment within 10 days. What will be the amount that they will pay if they pay within 10 days? Brilliant. So the net amount was 3,550. So I'm going to do that times 0.98 to give me 3,479, and then I'm going to times that by 1.2. So the first amount on my working sheet is the net amount before any discount. The next figure has got 2% taken away from it, and the third figure we've now added VAT. So the total they will pay will be 4174.80, and that is the amount that they would send if they paid and took advantage of that discount. Looking at task 2, which is worth 9 marks. So we've got the invoice and purchase order below relate to goods received from ABC Limited. So this is testing the student's ability to compare documentation. For part A, 4-mark question. Identify any discrepancies, otherwise known as differences, on the invoice by clicking on each left-hand box and then the appropriate right-hand box. So what they're basically saying is by clicking on one and then the other, you create a red line between, and so that's what we're basically saying. So let's go through and let's just double check what is correct, what is incorrect. So the first one then, terms of payment. So it says the terms on the invoice say net monthly account, and on the purchase order it says the terms of payment of 50% discount for payment by the end of the month. So I think that is showing on the invoice, but that is incorrect because it does not match the purchase order. So we don't know which is correct, but we know that there is a difference there. So the terms of payment are incorrectly shown on the invoice. The next question, it says VAT rate. So the VAT rate, what are the options? So let's have a look at our invoice then for the VAT rate. It says that VAT is at 20%. There's no reason to suggest otherwise, so I'm happy with the VAT rate correctly shown on the invoice. Trade discount. Let's have a look at the trade discount. So the trade discount on the invoice is not shown because we can just see there isn't anything on there, anything to do with the trade discount. And quantity, let's have a look. So the purchase order was for 400 items and the invoice is for 450. So therefore it is shown on the invoice, but it is incorrect. So relatively straightforward 4 marks on that task. You'd be happy with that in the real exam. The next question, the invoice below has been received from Benson PLC. The invoice is shown. We're not going to check it or anything. B, record the invoice in the appropriate daybook by selecting the correct daybook title and making the necessary entries. So the invoice has been received from Benson PLC, so it's come into our business, received from another party, and therefore it must be a purchase. So it would be the purchaser's daybook. The date is already in there. The details, it's going to be Benson PLC, and the total is £256.50. The VAT is £42.75, and the net amount is 213.75. Now, personally, I think that is a really easy 5-mark question. Certainly, when you compare it to task 1.1, where we had to work out the difference between those, when we were looking for the missing payment, the missing documentation from that payment, this is a different kettle of fish altogether, and a relatively straightforward one. I don't think there's anything in there that should catch you out. Just going to double check against the model answer. Just heaven forbid that I just said it was easy and I make a mistake along the way. No, it literally is as straightforward as I thought. So that would be a good booster in an exam. So that's that is 1.2 done. I didn't keep my eye on the time, but I suspect I flew through that one, and that would be a good time saving for later in the paper. 3. It is the policy of Cross PLC to check statements of account when they are received and only to include payments. Only to include in the payment those transactions that are shown in the supplier's account in the purchaser's ledger. This is the account of DBL Limited in the purchaser's ledger and the statement of account received from them. Place a tick next to the 3 items in the statement of account that should not be included in the payment because they are missing from the supplier's account. So that seems like a really wordy question. All they basically are looking for is what transactions are on the statement of account document that are not in purchase ledger account. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to make use of this tick box thing just to visualize it. Let's go through the purchase ledger account and let's tick off what we can see on both documents. So credit note C33, £150. I can see that is the first transaction on my statement of account. On the 4th of June, we've got a bank entry for £12,946. And that is not on the statement of account. On the 1st of June, we have an opening balance of 12,946. That wouldn't necessarily be shown on there anyway, so I'm not going to worry about that. I'll just pick it off just so that you can get rid of it. 10th of June, we've got £462 transaction. On the 15th of June, we've got a 9216, that is shown. And on the 21st of June, we've got 1543, that is shown. So let's just run through those. We've got the 150, which is in the purchase ledger account. We've got the 462, which is in the purchase ledger account. We've got the goods total of 9216, which is shown in the purchase account. We've got 129, that is not shown. We've got 1187, that is not shown. We've got the 1543, that is shown. And we've got 3926, which is not shown. Just going to double check that asked for 3 transactions. It did. So those 3 transactions that I have put a tick next to would not be included in the payment because they are not shown on my purchase ledger account. Part B, worth 1 mark. What will be the amount paid? So basically what we're saying is let's add up the transactions that are not ticked, i.e. the ones that will be included in the payment. So we've got 150, we've got 462, we've got 9216, and we've got 1543. Let's just double check which of those are invoices and which ones are credit notes. So the 150 is a goods returned. So let's think I'm going to do that. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to add my 462. I'm going to add my 9216, and I'm going to add 1543. That's coming in at 11,071. So 11071, and that is just worth 1 mark. And then the final part of the task, is it the final part? No, it's not the one actually. Sorry, I'm corrected. This is the 3rd part of 4. This is the account of Stone PLC in the purchaser's ledger and the credit note that has been received from the supplier but not yet entered into their account. So what will be the amount to be paid to Stone PLC once the credit note has been entered into their account? So what we're basically doing, we're not allowed to, we can't do it because the question won't allow it. What we ideally would like to do is put a credit note on the debit side of Stone PLC. So in my workings, let's just make a note of those amounts. I've got 368,482, 3882, 917, 1446, 352. We've got a credit note of £198 total. So let's just add those up and we'll work out the difference. So I've got a difference there of 2233, and that is the amount that I would be expected to pay. So all I've basically done is treated it like a balance carried down question. Although I haven't entered any details, I'm keeping it relatively efficient on my spreadsheet there. That's what we've done. We've just basically worked out how much do they owe, or how much do we owe this supplier at the end of this period, taking into account a credit note that's been received. Final part of this task is worth 4 marks. So the two invoices below were received on the 6th of July from credit suppliers who offer a prompt payment discount. So let's have a look. So they were received on the 6th of July. Calculate the amount paid to each supplier if the discount is taken and show the date by which the supplier should receive the payment. Okay, so let's do some workings on this one then. So we have got invoice 1, which is worth 1,350, and we've got invoice 2, which is 3,180. The invoice total, excuse me, the discount is 2% for invoice 1, so it'll be 98% I'll need of that. And then for the next one, 2.5%. So if I do that times that, and then work across. So invoice 1, I will pay 1,323, and invoice 2 will be 3,150 pence. And then the date by which supplier should receive, excuse me, the payment should be received by the supplier. So what we're looking at here then, so it is an invoice date of the 5th of July, and they have to receive it within 10 days. So I would suggest the payment needs to be received by the 15th of July, 10 days onto the 15th. For the second invoice, 14 days of invoice, so that would take us up to, where are we? Date is the 5th of July, we will add 14 to it, so that would be the 19th of July. Yeah, I'm happy with that. So let's just double check it against the model answer. Let's just make sure I'm not telling you completely wrong. No, that's what I would be happy with that. That would be 4 marks. So we can move on now to task 1. To task 4 then, we've got a cash book question. So the 2 amounts below have been received from customers and are ready to be entered in the cash book. So basically into the information then. So the first remittance arrives 1st of August. We need date to count. An amount of 474 will be transferred to our bank account in full settlement of our June account. So that's come from Burgess Retail. It's a back transfer, so it's going to go into my bank account. So it'll be 474, and these must be trade receivables because they're talking about paying off their account. I'm not going to use VAT because this is not a cash transaction. VAT was dealt with when we initially recorded the invoice, so I'm happy to just leave it at that 474. Receipt 108, 1st of August, for £1,000 and cash of 326 received from Alba PLC for goods supplied today. So for this one then, I will be concerned with VAT because its payment was received today, goods were dealt with today. So it will be Alba PLC, they're the people who paid us. It's a combination of cash and bank, so we can use the same row, no problem. So 326 cash, £1,000 going into the bank. Let's just make the calculation. So we've got 1,326, and that includes VAT. So I'm just going to divide that by 6 to get my VAT, and I'm going to do that minus that to get my net. So we've got a cash sale of 1105. The VAT is 221, and we're just going to add those up. So let's just quickly do. I could do this in my head, I suppose. I'll only make a mistake. So 509 bank 4694. The others are easy because there's only one transaction in there. 474 1105. We don't have to write zeros into cells that we don't use. Happy to just leave them blank. So that would be a debit side of a cash book entry. And now it's saying the credit side of the cash book shows total cash payments during the week 342. Using your answer to A, calculate the cash balance. So we're just basically going to take one from the other. What we're saying is, oh, excuse me, we've got, let's do it properly. So we've got £509 on the debit side, 342 on the credit side. The difference between the two will indicate £167 cash left over. So that would be that. Part C is usually going to be the same thing but for bank. So for bank, in principle again, we've got receipts of 4694. We've got payments of 1743, and we're going to do the difference between the two. 2951, and yeah, I'm just going to double check everything as we go. So 2951. Be expected. Yeah, so let's move on to task 1.5. So task 1.5, an organisation restores the petty cash interest level of 175 on the last day of each month. The petty cash shows all the petty cash payments. Sorry, the petty cash book shows all the petty cash payments in August. So the first question, what will be the entry in the petty cash book to restore the interest level on the 31st of August? So what we basically need to do is we need to work out how to restore our balance to £175. So we need to basically replace what's been spent. So let's go to the working sheet and make a note of what payments have gone out. So £30.66, £46.50, £37.20, and £15.92. So in this period, we have spent £130 and 28 pence, and we need to replace it. So £130 28 pence is going to be the amount. We're going to enter it in the notes. It would be cash from bank or cash, because from the multiple choice we've been given, that's the only one that would make any sense anyway. And it's going to be on the debit side, because remember, the petty cash book money goes in on the debit side, out on the credit side. So we're replacing it on the debit side. Part B, what will be the entry in the petty cash book to record the closing balance on the 31st of August after the interest level has been restored? So this is a really easy one, despite you might not think it. But if you think about this logically, we have our account back up to £175. So the balance carried down is going to be £175. The carried down balance will be on the credit side, because we know it's going to be brought down on the next period on the debit side. So the carried down balance will be a credit of £175. Task C, what will be the total of the back column in the petty cash book? So don't overthink this. It's literally addition. So £19.06. Nothing on the debit side to worry about. And that would be, I think that's a really easy mark for you. On the 2nd of September, the petty cash vouchers below are ready to be recorded. So let's record them. Petty cash 317 is a parcel delivered to the customer, 4155 plus VAT. So 4155 is my net amount. This is just testing your ability to work with VAT, I think. Let's work out 20%. £8.31. Let's add them together. Nearly made a mistake there. So the answer, £49.86, 318. So the terminology has changed for this petty cash voucher. This time we've got £35.28, but this is inclusive of VAT. So the £35.28, divide that by 6. It's £5.88. And the difference between the two £29.40. So 6 marks on that one. Nothing in there that's too scary, I don't think. So I think we'd be quite happy with that. The only thing we could get wrong is get mixed up with whether to add VAT or not. Part E, 2 marks. Which analysis columns in the petty cash book will be used to record net amount of the petty cash payments in Part D? So 317 was a parcel delivery to a customer, so with delivery costs or something like that. Yep, postage and carriage. And then petty cash 318, keys for car park gate. Key for car park gate. I would say miscellaneous expenses for that one. It's a little bit ambiguous. It doesn't really fit under anything else. So most companies would have something like that, a miscellaneous expenses account or a sundry expenses account is also a common phrase. So let's have a look at task 1.6. So task 6, okay. This is the big one in terms of you guys remembering your daybook entries. So they will ask you in the AAT, they can throw at you any of the 6 main daybooks. So sales daybook, purchase daybook, discount allowed, sales returns, purchase returns, discount received. Any of them can come up and you need to know how to work them. So the thing I'm looking for on here is, if I just circle this bit, this is the key bit of this task, because what we're basically saying here is you by now you should know where discount allowed would go on a trial balance. This said sales daybook, you should know where sales would go on a trial balance, and that is how this works. Key thing for you guys is identify the daybook and ask yourself, where would that go on a trial balance? If you can answer that question, everything else falls into place. So discount allowed daybook, clue is in the title. I'm going to start with discount allowed. My second entry has to be VAT. My third entry is always either going to be sales ledger control or purchase ledger control. So ask yourself, does this transaction relate to a customer or a supplier? If it's a customer, we use SLCA. If it's a supplier, it will be PLCA. Discount allowed is a discount that we have given to a customer, and therefore it is a sales ledger control entry. Now let's go through the amounts. So discount allowed 425 net, VAT 85, sales ledger control 510. Now, in terms of debits and credits, this is the bit where we're going to answer the question about trial balances. Discount allowed is an expense to the company. It is therefore a debit entry on a trial balance, and therefore we increase it on the debit side. If we think about the acronym PEARLS, PEA, purchases, expenses, assets, discount allowed is an expense and therefore is a debit. VAT, we just basically copy what happened above, and that is always the case. VAT will go hand in hand with the net amount, so 2 debits, and then we will credit sales ledger control so that the double entry is complete. What will be the entry in the sales ledger? Let's have a look at the information by rushing. One of the entries in the discount ledger is a credit note to Jackson Jones for £70 plus VAT. So Jackson Jones, £70 plus VAT, it's going to be an amount of £84. That's going to be a credit. The sales ledger entry is always going to be on the same side as whatever you did in the first part of the task. So if it's a sales ledger entry, it will be, in this case, it's a credit. Jackson Jones, therefore, must be credited as well. And it basically, that will be the same for any day book. Whatever we did to the control account, we will also do to the subsidiary sales ledger or purchase ledger accounts. Excuse me. So I'm happy with that. Move on to task 1.7. So task 1.7, there are totals. These are the totals of the cash book at the end of the month. What will be the entries in the general ledger? So I know that if you've been in my class, you'll be sick of me talking about going through the column headings, but that's basically what we're going to do. We're not going to worry about the cash and bank column. We are going to worry about any of the other columns that have entries in them. So if we start with the debit side of the cash book, you can see that the trade receivables are on the debit side because this is money that has been received. So we're going to start with sales ledger control because remember, sales ledger, we do not have an account in our ledger called trade receivables, but that will be the column heading. So it's debited to the cash book. I'm therefore going to credit sales ledger control with the other half of the entry. Now moving through the credit side of the cash book, we've got VAT, we've got PLCA, and we've got cash purchases. The amounts are 59,9942 and 295, and these are all going to be debit entries. They were credited to the cash book, so therefore we're going to debit the other accounts. So those would be my entries from the cash book. 12 marks. So if you can get your confidence up with making entries from a cash book, you can really rack up the points on these tasks. So yeah, go through the headings. Just key thing to remember, if I just want to double check something. No, I was going to suggest that they might give you trade receivables and trade payables as an option on the drop down list, but actually they've been quite kind to you and they haven't even done that. So but that would be a relatively straightforward task. It doesn't matter which order you do them in. It will mark it correct just as long as you've got the right answers in a different order. It doesn't matter. Task 1.8. Let's have a look. So task 1.8, this is to do with balancing accounts. So the following two accounts are in the general ledger at close of play or close of day on the 31st of October. We've got a loan account and we've got an office equipment account. What will be the balance brought down on the 1st of November on each account? Brilliant. So we should be well versed with balancing our accounts now. So let's just make a note of them. So the loan account, we've got a debit entry of 1260. We've got a credit entry of 26,725 and a bank entry of 10,000. Work out the difference between the two. So let's do that. So the loan account has got 35455 and the office equipment account has got 13924 865 200. $14589. And then it's just a case of working out the debits and credits. Well, the loan account is going to be brought down on the credit side as it is a liability, and we can see quite clearly that the credit side is far bigger than the debit. The office equipment is going to be the same. I don't suppose there's anything stopping the AAT asking you what the balance carried down would be, so it's always worth double checking what are they actually asking for, carried down or brought down, because obviously they're going to be reversed. Part B, we have to actually physically balance off an account. So the following account is made in the sales ledger at the close of play on the 31st of October. Complete the account by inserting the balance carried down together with date and details. So just going to quickly scan it for anything dodgy. There's nothing in there that's too scary. 1462497, 1525 and 3714. So let's work those out. So step one, work out the totals of your columns. So the debit side has a total of 15241. So I'm going to enter that into the total box for both sides. I'm then going to work out the difference between the two columns, 10,002. So the smallest side, which in this case was the credit side, I'm going to put 10,002. That's my carried down balance. And this is going to occur at the end of October. So my balance is going to be brought down on the 1st of November. And it's going to be the same amount. So 10,002. So if you feel as though I'm going through this quite quick, I'm just conscious of time really. You know, you can always rewind and watch the process again. but I'll quickly go through that again. So what I did on my working sheet, I made a note of the debit column and the credit column, worked out the totals, and the total on the debit side was 15241, which is bigger than the credit side. So that total will be the total that we will use on both sides of our pay account. I then went to the small side of the account, in this case the credit side, and worked out the difference between debit and credit. It was £10,002. So I put that in as my balance carried down at the end of October. I added a day and I brought down the balance to the 1st of November to 10,002. That's worth 8 marks. So if you're struggling with balancing accounts, get that practice in, because it would be a shame to lose marks on a task like that, where some of the more complex things that you've learned, if you lose marks on those, it's a little bit more forgivable. But balancing an account is a relatively straightforward process. So if you can't do it, if you're struggling with it, you need to practice it. So we're getting towards the tail end of the exam now. So I'm on to task 1.9. So task 1.9, some balances have been entered into the partially prepared trial balance below. So part A, insert the totals of the debit and credit column for the partially prepared trial balance. So let's just make a quick note of those figures. So 3189, 19250, 7500, 1950, 1200, and 29184. Let's just add them up. So 24389 on the debit side and 37884 on the credit side. So I think that the purpose of this task really is to test your debits and credits, really, because they're clever in the way they've worded this. Because it's only partially prepared, the debit and credit column do not have to match, which is not the case, obviously, for a full trial balance. So presumably we're going to have to finish one off. So the remainder of the balances have now been extracted from the account record as shown below. Okay, so complete the trial balance by transferring the relevant amounts to the debit or credit column. Do not enter figures with decimal places and do not enter zero in unused cells. So they've put the figures in that we've already been given. Right, what I'm going to do, just for purposes of this video, stop having to scroll up and down all the time. Bear with me. Right, what I'm going to do, just so I can keep things on screen, I'm going to do a quick snip of that. Paste it into there. I can get that information as I need it. So I can scroll down now to my full trial balance. So purchase ledger control 14588. So purchase ledger control is a liability account. So 14588. Equipment hire is an expense. So it's going to be a debit entry. Legal fees are an expense, 781. Petty cash is an asset. So it's a debit. So petty cash is 175. Drawings, where's that figure? 3250. Discount received. So anytime we see the word received in an account title, we know it's coming into the business and therefore it's an income. So I'm going to credit it. Bank overdraft, 3126. It's a liability. Purchases is an expense, 16492. Capital is a credit. Where's capital? 9816. And the sales ledger control account is an asset, 19407. Now, if we wanted to, we could double check that and do the workings. And if I was in the exam for real, that's what I would expect. That's what I would be doing. So let's just quickly make a note of that. So fingers crossed this adds up. If not, I must have made a drop to clanger. No, so they both add up. So I'm happy that I've transferred the numbers accurately across to my trial balance. 10 marks that question. There's nowhere to hide on a trial balance question. You either know your stuff or you don't. Especially on a question like that where they haven't put totals in for you, you would be responsible to check them yourself. And then the final task is 10. So let's just have a look at 10. So 10, sort of a miscellaneous set of tasks. 10. They usually throw in different bits and pieces. So a new business has allocated customer account codes to each customer in the sales ledger as shown below. Code is made up of the first 4 letters of the customer's name, followed by the number of the ledger page allocated to each customer in that alphabet group. So a little bit of a tongue twister, really. But what we're basically saying is every time you get a new customer that starts with an A, their number will be the next number sequentially from the ones you already have. So if I got a new company called Arthur, for example, who came in, then I'd look at my A's. I can see that there are already 2 customers that start with an A. Arthur, we end with 0, 3, and so on. So let's have a look at the actual task then. So the first company is Heartstone PLC. So I need to use, there are no companies already in there that start with a H. So it's the first 4 letters. So I'm going to use Hearts, and there will be 0, 1. We haven't used them before. We haven't got any companies that start with a H in our system. Parker, going to be P-A-R-K. We've already got Pemberton Limited. We've already got Penn Limited. So PARK is 0, 3 because they're the 3rd company that we've signed up that start with the letter P. Is that it? That seems. Yeah, I'm overthinking things a little bit. I thought there must be something to do with the tier counts. There's nothing to do. All right then. So part B. One customer has been offered a prompt payment discount for payment within 10 days. Show what 2 actions should be taken if the customer takes the discount and pays within 10 days. So let's just double check those actions. So record the amount received in the cash book and ledgers, change the amounts of the original invoice, issue a new invoice for the amount paid, issue a credit note for the discount taken plus VAT. So the first one, record the amount received in the cash book and ledgers, is spot on. We would definitely do that. Change the amounts of the original invoice, definitely not. The invoice stays as is. Issue a new invoice for the amount paid, no. And finally, issue a credit note for the discount taken plus VAT, spot on. That's what we would be looking at. The next bit is testing your knowledge of assets and liabilities. So let's just make a quick list. So assets, so let's go through them. 115,000. Premises is an asset. Loan is a liability. Cash at bank 11433. Asset. Furniture 12392. Amount owing to credit suppliers is a liability 12396. Amount owing from credit customers is an asset 14224. So my assets are worth 153,049. My liabilities are worth 67,396. And the capital is going to be the difference between the two. So equals minus that. The capital comes in 85,653. Just double check that. Yeah, 5653 is missing capital balance. And then task D, so we're at the last task of the exam, but it's 5 marks. So it could be the difference between pass fail, it could be the difference between sort of 88 or 91% or whatever. So it could push your score right up with it. So let's get complacent. So the transactions below have taken place. Show whether each transaction would class as capital expenditure, capital income, revenue expenditure, or revenue income by putting the appropriate classification next to the transaction. So purchased a motor van for delivery of goods. Any purchase of a substantial asset such as that would be capital expenditure. Purchase stationery for use in the office would be an everyday item, so it would be a revenue expenditure. Purchase train tickets for business travel would be revenue expenditure. Receive cash for the sale of goods would be a revenue income. And then the last one, received a check from the owner would be capital income, because we're basically saying it's an influx of cash from the owner, which shouldn't be a regular item that happens all the time. Now, if this was the real exam, obviously I wouldn't have done my workings on a spreadsheet, I would have done it manually, so the timings are slightly out. But I forgot at the moment, on the timer of the exam, I've got 32 minutes left. If this was the real exam, my advice to you would be go back through the paper now. If there's a task that you were struggling with, then you can go through now and spend a bit of time on it, because you've locked in all the other answers. If you are on a task, so if I go back to random, go back to 1.4, if you are on a task and you are struggling with it, I'm just going to scroll my screen down a touch. So if you're struggling with it, you can see my mouse at the bottom of the screen. There's a thing there that says flag question. You click that. That doesn't do anything to the paper. The marker for you, that's a task that you have struggled with. But that's a really useful tool. Don't get bogged down on a task. Come back to it at the end, because especially early in the paper, if you get struggling on task 1.3 and the clock is ticking down, you're potentially going to lose time on the later questions. So my advice would be, if you sort of find yourself getting bogged down for time on a task, then yeah, use the flag function and go back to it at a later point. Now, on the mock exams, when you get to the end of the paper, when I click submit, it will come up on screen how I have done. Unless I've missed something glaringly obvious, I believe I got 100% on that. So it will come up and it will say, congratulations, you have been assessed as competent. So that means I passed the mock exam. Just to be absolutely clear with people, when you do a proper AAT exam, you do not get that on screen. You will click finish and that will be it. Your screen goes pretty much blank, I believe. You will then have to wait for your AAT account to update with your percentage. So the mock exams do differ from the real thing. But yeah, so that was AAT mock exam 1 for bookkeeping transactions. I hope this video was of use to you, and you can always go back and replay any tasks that you found particularly troubling. So thank you for watching.